Yo, yo, yo. Welcome back to the channel. Yeah, man, this is AT Vlogs. I came across a video on YouTube, while I was busy, just roaming around, just to try, just trying to look at the competition and see what I'm working with, see what other people are doing and everything like that. Came across this video, I decided to react on it. It's talking about, why, sort of the street where the streetwear culture in South Africa is kind of dying out. The local streetwear culture, the local brands and everything like that. They sort of explain in depth about why that has been happening and then going on and everything like that. So yeah, I would like to react on it. Sort of give my opinion on a few facts and everything like that. So yeah, man. Without further ado, let's jump right into it.
So, question for the culture. Has South African streetwear died? I ask because following September 2019 protests against gender-based violence and femicide in our country, the founders of one of the most prolific South African streetwear brands, Young and Lazy, were outed on the list. The list being the anonymous forum of accusations against, and I cannot stress this enough, alleged abusers. Now,
It's crazy because when this was happening, I was sort of like just looking on the sidelines. I was on Twitter, just watching people getting cancelled and everything like that. So it's crazy. So if you're out there and you're starting out a brand, everything like that, just make sure that you stay away from all this type of stuff, man. Just make sure that you don't end up being on the list of abusers or anything like that. All right, guys, because you're trying to create a really good image for your brand, and the last thing you want is to end up having a brand stained by you being added in this type of crazy lists, stuff like that. So just make sure that you stay out of being part of that crazy stuff. You're trying to create a good image for your brand and for your personal brand as well, because you are the person who owns the brand, and people are going to look to you and how you live and everything like that. So yeah, man, just make sure that you're always clean.
allegations on the list included but were not limited to sexual harassment, assault, coercion, intimate partner violence, and rape. And the 9,000 plus accused included notable photographers, DJs, rappers, producers, musicians, influencers, promoters, stylists, graphic designers, and fashion designers, such as the founders of Young and Lazy. Following their alleged accusations, we saw a public sort of backlash against the brand, with people swearing that they would never shop from Young and Lazy.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happens. That, like I said before, she even spoke about this. I said that make sure that you clean, make sure that you don't get stained or anything like that. Because right now, as you can hear her talking right now, and she's talking about people trying to say that they don't want to buy from the brand anymore because now it's been stained with this whole abuse thing. So yeah, man, just make sure that you're always good, always clean, right, guys?
Again, we saw people defacing Young and Lazy products, and we even saw one person burning a Young and Lazy hoodie, which I mean kind of felt performative, but that's not the point. But yeah,
I'm not gonna say much, but hey, if you're going to ban something that you actually bought, hey, I mean, for the public, maybe it may send out a message, but hey, you bought that shit, man. You bought it.
a Young and Lazy hoodie was burned, and then the brand, which up until that point had been covered by ID, High Snobiety, The Fader, Hypebeast, they'd shown at SA Menswear Week, and they collaborated with Woolworths, Shelf Life, and Nike, just to name a few things. That brand had sort of just been wiped from existence. And it sort of felt like it had a domino effect on the rest of South African streetwear. Granted, September 2019 was only a few months before the entire world would be disrupted by the pandemic, and obviously the fashion industry has not been immune to the devastating effects of COVID-19. Lots of stores have been closed, many people have been laid off, and just generally wallets have been getting tighter and tighter. But even in the months before the pandemic became the pandemic, it just seemed like the fanfare and overwhelming hype that we saw from 2015 to 2018 around South African streetwear had already died. During that era, it really felt like it was this renaissance for South African fashion. It felt like there was a new streetwear brand every week. Like there was an almost constant stream of lookbooks, independent fashion shows, culture focused events, the coalition between liquor brands and sneaker stores and independent designers and stuff. Like it was really a very exciting time.
It was a very exciting time, but then as you probably seen in my past videos, in these kind of times where pretty much everybody is just creating a brand pretty much every day, you always need to stand out. You always need to do a little bit of research and go into how you're going to make your brand different, from the name, from what it stands for, from the designs and everything like that, because pretty much everybody is just picking up a logo that they find maybe when they Google on or when they go up to Play Store, and then they just sort of download those logo creating apps. Then they just create a brand up from that, and then they start selling. So it's so many brands that you always need to stand out. You always need to be different.
And this is also a really big deal, considering how it's not only very difficult to establish a South African fashion brand, but it's very rare to see it reached the success that the corner store brands like Soul Soul, Two Bop, Young and Lazy, along with other brands like Galaxy Boy, Loction Culture,
What happened to Galaxy Boy? Man, I don't think I haven't even seen like the one of the stores like in a minute. What happened to Galaxy Boy? Like, is this still going on? Is this still good? I'm gonna have to look that up, man. What happened to Galaxy Boy, man? It's crazy.
Head Honcho and so on were enjoying. And then also add to that the pandemic has had a lot of people trading in their blazers and their dress shoes and occasion wear for t-shirts, sweatsuits, just general athleisure, just a greater casualization of our dress sense. This should have been a time that would at least allow a streetwear brand to survive, if not thrive. And yes, a lot of the brands that I have mentioned are still...
That is true. A lot of brands should have thrived, in this pandemic and stuff like that. Including my brand. I should have thrived, but I sort of did not capture the moment and really used it to my advantage. I say this because in that 6 months when everybody was sort of like locked down at home, that's when a lot of people were online. That's when you could have used that opportunity to expose people to your brand. You could have used some paid advertising and everything like that. That was the time when most people were glued to their phones. They were on social media. They're sort of like looking for something to for entertainment and everything like that. So that's when I could have as well, captured that moment and used it to my advantage. But oh well, we learn, we keep learning.
Around, and it does seem like most of them are still operational, but it just sort of feels like the post-apartheid streetwear brands aren't the center of our cultural lexicon like they once were, or at least not remotely close to the chokehold they had over the South African fashion.
Yeah, exactly, because brands such as Loction Culture, those were the sort of brands that created the blueprint for people like me and you who's watching, to create these brands. They were really out there, working with celebrities, on TV and everywhere. Loction Culture was that brand, that I really thought, was going to become something big. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. But yeah, man, those post-apartheid, sort of brands and everything like that, those were the brands that were really making, big waves out here in South Africa.
Industry from 2015 to 2018. And it would be very hopeful and naive for me to think that it's solely that the abuse allegations had carried long-term repercussions for the industry in our country. But I would like to explore a little bit of what happened. So before we get into that, let's just go over what streetwear is and what I mean when I'm speaking about post-apartheid fashion. So what is streetwear? So there isn't a single definition of streetwear. Most of the dictionary definitions will speak about how it's a casual style of dress characterized by t-shirts, athletic wear, and sneakers, and it has its origins in the surf and skate culture of the 1980s. In fact, it's actually thought that the term streetwear was first used to describe the clothes skaters wore when they were skating on the street. But obviously you can see that it is a very large combination of efforts. Streetwear, just at a glance, is the cross-pollination of hip-hop, skateboarding, and surf. Japanese street fashion, African American people in culture, basketball, Latinx culture, grunge, punk, workwear, utilitarianism, postmodernism, pop art, and most recently, the luxury sector. And what's really made streetwear so ubiquitous and disruptive, beyond the drop model, the constant pop culture osmosis, and like the invention of hypebeast culture, has been its ability to do the one thing so many others are struggling to do, which is to not only capture but actually hold the very fleeting and fickle attention of millennials and Generation Z. And that's why today it's estimated that 10% of the global apparel and footwear market share is just streetwear. And for context, that's over 185.
Yeah, man. Streetwear is really big these days. A lot of people are wearing streetwear. Literally everywhere you go, everywhere you look, celebrities, everything. It's all streetwear these days. Even big brands, such as Louis Vuitton and everything like that. They are sort of now starting to collaborate with brands like Supreme and everything like that, because they can actually see that streetwear is becoming a sort of fashion culture that is really really liked by a lot of people in the world, especially the youth. So and obviously that has a lot to do with them being able to make sales and money, of course. So yeah, man, streetwear culture is a really big big pool of people that you can target.
$1 billion just being held by t-shirts and track pants. So it's obviously very apparent that streetwear is making big money, and streetwear is the moment. I mean, that's why even in the past decade we've seen this like scramble for cool, as everyone and anyone is trying to jump into this market. We've seen the appointments of streetwear personalities like Virgil Abloh and Kim Jones at heritage fashion houses Louis Vuitton and Christian Dior respectively. We were all there to witness what Kanye West Yeezy had done for the idea of the celebrity streetwear line and the collaboration between hip-hop and high fashion. Even the freaking shipping and logistics company DHL has released a collection with the French luxury streetwear brand Vetements. What is it about streetwear that is so valuable to everyone? What has allowed streetwear to become the 2010s equivalent of a celebrity perfume line? I think that this can be answered through my own definition of streetwear. So to start, in 2011, Bobby Hundreds had defined the baseline for what makes a streetwear brand: t-shirts and exclusivity.
Yo, if you don't know about that guy, you should really go to YouTube and check out Bobby Hundreds, man. I've watched several videos about that guy. I know how he came up, everything like that. Him being Asian, I think, and him having his parents being against him, doing anything else rather than, having a profession like being a doctor, anything like that. And how, he went to law school, and in law school, he made a after he was done with law school, he got a job at a law firm, and him having somebody tell him that, he wasn't really passionate about law, and he should, really go for something that he was passionate about. And that's how he started, his clothing brand and everything like that, So yeah, man, Bobby Hundreds, is a real G, man. That I really like the brand. You should go and check that out. If not, I will put the channel and the video that I'm talking about in the description below.
And while I understand these are two very important aspects to streetwear, I think it's a little bit rigid. Streetwear is so catching not because of an aesthetic value, not because of a revolutionary product, or even really a groundbreaking business model. Yes, those aspects definitely do exist, but that's not what makes streetwear streetwear. If you look closely at the subcultures from which streetwear gets its influence, you'll see these recurring themes of anti-conformity, anti-authoritarianism, community acceptance that doesn't come at the cost of self-expression and individual freedom, and this coalition of the future and the present. In short, streetwear is the commodification of counterculture. Streetwear looks at young people and says that if you believe in A, B, and C, if you want to represent these values, if you want to co-sign a certain ideology, all you have to do in order to communicate that to the world, to your tribe, to your community, is just buying a product.
She is really like she's really nailing, the description right now. She's really nailing also, sort of the things that you need to look at when you're also starting your own brand. The selling people values, selling people, what they would be standing for when they buy your brand and stuff like that. Like, so she's really nailing this. I like it.
And this is especially powerful because millennials and Generation Z are one of the most savvy, or the savviest consumers in history. They do not respond to being sold to. You have to connect with them as a consumer. And streetwear has basically had that in its DNA. And looking at it from that vantage point, I don't see streetwear dying anytime soon. In fact, I see it morphing and evolving, but I do think it is going to be around for a while. And since globally, even during the pandemic, streetwear has sort of still been on the up and up, it has been one of the sectors of the fashion industry that have done better during these tough times. I have to now wonder, why isn't that the case in South Africa? In my rich aunt aesthetic analysis, which I will link around, I spoke about the performative and transformative nature of dress for young South African women. The same can also generally be applied to people of color in South Africa. While most of us cannot have any control over our skin color, you can control your second skin, which is clothing. And the very specific and strategic manipulation of the second skin in order to transcend your position and status in society, particularly in an upward manner, is the best way I could describe post-apartheid fashion. Basically, streetwear has allowed young South Africans to buy into a global tribe, one where they're also akin or they're on the same level as professional athletes and rappers, i.e., other black people experiencing upward mobility, praise, and wealth. Of course, that isn't to say that globalization and growing American cultural dominance are the only drivers in post-1994 fashion. There are many elements of township culture, banzula, kwaito, traditional ethnic dress, and even things like dandyism as well. Going through the
Yeah, man, these are also things that you can look at and also try, to change and sort of, make it your own, so that you can create something totally new that's still also relatable to something that people recognize in South Africa. So sort of stuff like this, with the fashion that people like right now and everything like that, you can sort of morph it and turn it into something that's new and still familiar.
interviews and documentaries of high-profile streetwear brand founders, you'll see that a very big key to their success was creating a tangible, engaged community. These founders combined their local influences with their global influences in a way that served other kids like them, and it proposed the creation of their own rituals, standards of excellence, and so on. It's why corner store was once the place to hang out. It's why that Soul Sold Destroy Today jacket was a highly coveted item. It's how they came to beat the odds that faced most young South African entrepreneurs in South Africa. Where did everything go wrong? So I touched on this briefly in my sustainable fashion video, also linked around. We're dropping a lot of cards today. But it does bear repeating that even with the best product or the best marketing, it is not easy to build a fashion brand in South Africa.
Facts.
It's a difficult task to produce quality, locally made clothing.
Facts. If you go to my YouTube channel right now and look at my very first video that I posted, I was actually complaining about this, that everything is sort of vague. You literally can just go to one place where you can literally get everything done for you. You have to literally search, and not everybody is going to be willing to help you, because it's a really tough market to sort of break into.
And it's an even more difficult task to get South Africans who've been trained to value imports and international brands to power with their money.
Fact. And that while she's saying that, if you look at if you go to my Instagram channel, I'll probably put it down somewhere here, and you look at my designs. My designs are sort of targeted towards the art side of my brand and everything like that. It's not really concentrated, or how should I put this? It's not really designs that are literally South African concentrated and everything like that. I sort of try to keep it on a neutral, sort of leveled playing field, where either person can find it appealing and cool, and and at the same time, at the same time it's local, because I really, looked into it, and then noticed that a lot of, South African youth, are really influenced by, the global market and everything like that. So I've really tried to keep my brand neutral. I've really tried to, appeal to them, and also appeal to somebody who's really looking for something that is locally made as well.
But these people did it. And you can see through the success of all the initiatives and sort of landmarks that we were building during this time, like Street Cred, like Cotton Fest, the RHTC store, the social market, the very first Experience AFI event, First Thursdays, La Familia, the House of Vans parties, Father Coffee, the archive store, and so on. Everyone was working on building a very authentic and genuine and unique cultural hub out of Cape Town and Johannesburg, specifically Braamfontein and Johannesburg, and even Pretoria with the social market, where
The social market is a really helpful place where you can sort of go there and expose people to your brand and stuff like that. So this type of initiatives are really helpful. Even though there isn't a lot of, channels to help you bring your brand up front into people's eyes. Out in, out in the everyday and stuff like that. Things like social markets are really helpful.
it was really like young people, for young people, by young people. But even with all this like social cachet that everyone is building and seeming to do all the very basic streetwear things right, everything still sort of fell off by 2019. Unfortunately, I don't have any definitive answers to exactly what happened to each business and event and initiative. And a lot of the websites, articles, and social media pages have been deleted or lost. There's also been a big
I would like to say that, the fall off could also be, have been caused by the reason of the, recent, increase in youth unemployment. Perhaps, also the increase in imports. If you go to a place just like Johannesburg, there's a lot of places where you can find, sort of imitations and fakes and everything like that, which, it further decreases, the demand of local brands, and stuff like that, because, people now, they're not really looking into, joining a community, a hub, and anything like that. They're just looking into, whatever they can find that's affordable and fashionable. So I think that those are the, sort of the things that, really contributed to, the fall of local brands and stuff like that. But hopefully, we're working on it, man. We're working on it. Even in this channel, we're trying to, get that back. We're trying to, grow a brand, that becomes, something that people wear with pride. That becomes something that's also in demand.
flurry of scandal that has also kind of erased certain things. I'm looking at you, XAFI. And it was a bit sad because I was aware that we've lost a lot of our fashion media in the past decade, but I didn't realize how pervasive it was. It was really hard to compile any research for this video. A lot of this is going to be conjecture.
That's facts. Literally, maybe there should be, an increase in people who are constantly blog posting stuff about the South African streetwear fashion community and stuff like that, because it is really hard, to make any sort of research on Google if you're trying to find anything remotely related, to South African streetwear.
On my part, these are just some things that I personally think went wrong. It's my opinion. So the first thing is too much of a focus on replication and not enough on innovation. Before the fashion timelines had split up globally to what they are now, it was the norm that in South Africa we would receive the latest trends 6 months or more later than when they had premiered overseas.
Yep. We all know this. If something dope comes out, you already know that you're taking an L if you're trying to get it out here in South Africa. So we know this.
This was before the see now, buy now model, and before a lot of multinational corporations like Topshop, H&M, and Zara had realized that there was money to be made or exploited in South Africa. Of course, at this time, as much as it took 6 months for things to arrive here, the internet was still instantaneous. And even if you wanted to shop online during this time, a lot of stores did not ship to South Africa. And if they did, it took way too long. It was way too expensive. And Basically, the only people who had access to the latest releases and the newest trends were people who were fortunate enough to travel overseas. What had made a lot of these independent local streetwear brands successful in this time was that their business model was seizing this gap in the market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. But then now everything is sort of becoming instantaneous. Now you can literally order something and get it right there now. So I kind of understand why this is actually in a way killing the local streetwear market and stuff like that. Yeah.
So there was a lot of sneaker consignment stores, or just brands where people would go overseas, shop a bunch of the stuff that was out, and come back here and sell it. So basically, these brands were very good at replicating the right thing at the right time once upon a time, because they were able to identify a gap in the market. But I don't think too many of them had really planned beyond this point, or had planned any sort of innovations or business models that was more than just being the first person to hop onto a trend. And obviously, they got beat.
This is why it's really bad to focus your brand on a trend. Because trends come and go. Create a philosophy around your brand and stick to that philosophy and ride it out until the end, man. Don't just hop on trends.
Out by bigger corporations and companies that had better access to funding and distribution channels. Number 2, clout does not pay bills. So, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these brands at the time were also reaching really high levels of notoriety thanks to all the features from international thought leaders in the fashion industry, like khensani, like ID, like Days, Hypebeast, The Fader, and so on. But I don't think any of them had really figured out how to turn all the social cachet into actual sales. But also, and this is just a generalization that I've made at looking at most local fashion brands, not just streetwear, but there is sort of a lack of good or effective business management. I think a lot of these brands are very good at their marketing and at creating hype and at creating beautiful visuals and appearing lovely, but not really doing much or not thinking much beyond that. I think a lot of them don't.
Yo, I got roaches out here, man. I got roaches here. I used to have jack roaches. I got roaches out here. Anyway, yeah, man. Streetwear, at the end of the day, as much as maybe you are really into, you're a creative person just like me, you're really good at creating these dope designs that people love and everything like that. At the end of the day, it's still a business. It still needs to sustain itself. You still need to learn about profits and everything like that, and how you can keep making profits and stuff like that, taxes, everything like that, business registrations, trademarks. And at the end of the day, it's still a business. So you still have to learn the business side of streetwear if you really want to, become successful and make a good living out of it.
Consider things like having professional customer service, like having an email with your domain name on it, or responding to customers in a way that's helpful and makes the shopping experience easier. A lot of them don't have websites, and if they do have websites, they're not very good or appealing or easy to use, which, also considering how paranoid most South Africans are about internet fraud, isn't very well.
Yo, I think this is the biggest disadvantage when it comes to starting a streetwear brand in South Africa, is that a lot of people are not really comfortable with buying stuff online. A lot of people are not really comfortable with taking out their card and putting on their card details and stuff like that on a website and then wait for it to be delivered. A lot of people are really paranoid when it comes to that. So I think it's one of the biggest problems when it comes to trying to really make a good local streetwear brand, because you can start a website, you can go to Shopify, start your website and stuff like that, but then how good is it if nobody is willing to come through and purchase stuff from you?
Wise. They're also not considering how they should be fostering long-term good supplier relationships, which is doing the kind of right planning, or even quality control is a big problem. I think a lot of them have products that look good but aren't actually structurally sound, which are complaints I've seen from stylists who source from these brands.
Yep. This is why I'm really, I always talk about, you really have to, be savvy about your quality. How long does how long will this t-shirt stay looking good? How good of a quality is your t-shirt and stuff like that, because first impressions are something that you are really going out for as a brand that's just starting out.
And obviously that just doesn't create repeat customers. I understand that a lot of what has made streetwear so revolutionary was that it was young kids taking t-shirts, which is one of the cheapest products to make and sell, adding really cool, interesting graphic designs and flipping that into empires now valued at over billions and billions of dollars. But in a post-2010 world, you can't just offer a graphic t-shirt in a primary color when people could very easily find something similar at a much cheaper price from a more reputable store like Mr. Price or Sports Scene and expect to compete.
Exactly. This is why if you're going to do something similar to that, which is what something that I'm also starting out with, make sure that constantly the graphic designs that you put on your t-shirts are always the designs that go along with the same message of your brand that you're pushing out. That way you cannot just put a flower and a graphic flower on your t-shirt, and there's literally no way of telling what this flower has to do with your brand. What does this flower has to do with your slogan? If it's urban culture canvas and I just put a flower on my t-shirt, it's like, what does this flower have to do with your brand? Like, what's going on here? So it's if you're going to start out something like that, because people do, I've seen people who say stuff like that on platforms such as Twitter. People say, this person is selling us an expensive t-shirt when I can just go to Mr. Price and get a t-shirt similar with a similar design for a lot more cheaper. So why should I buy your t-shirt? So I think messaging is really the biggest thing. You're trying to connect to these people on an emotional level, so that when they look at your t-shirt, it's not just about buying the graphic t-shirt, but it's about being part of the community. It's about connecting with the message those t-shirts are putting out there.
There has to be a greater unique selling position than just another tracksuit. Like, I think people think that it is just enough to put a logo on a t-shirt and make $1 million. Like, that's not realistic anymore. 3, the boys club. So first, I think it's very important to address that another reason why streetwear has taken off so well is because it's one of the first times in modern history that men have been allowed to participate in fashion. Hypebeast culture, sneakers, and Kanye West have finally let men have a manly forum through which they can talk about clothes and shopping. Something they've been denied so long because of how feminine fashion has been for a long time. And I think this also influences how much of a cishet boys club it's become, often leaving women and queer people out of the conversation, which is unfair considering how much women and queer people are a part of the fabric of streetwear.
I'm gonna have to disagree on that, right? Women have a lot. I'm talking a lot of options when it comes to fashion. Finally, dudes like us, finally come through and we finally have something dope that we can wear and stuff like that. So I don't think it's unfair that they are being excluded. But I think when it comes to on a financial level, on a buying power level, because we know that women they have the biggest buying power in the world when it comes to fashion and stuff like that. I think it would be really dumb to exclude them. So obviously you gotta include them, because they got the biggest buying power, man. Why would you exclude women or in the streetwear fashion and stuff like that? Look at the way she's looking at me, man. She's like, what are you saying?
Like, for the fact that some of these brands would see that lots of women were buying their products, but they would still market themselves as strictly menswear. If they were opening themselves up to being more unisex or gender neutral, they were employing the pink it and shrink it model, which specifically applies to how sneaker brands will offer a feminized version of a popular sneaker to make it appealing to women in a very patronizing way. Moreover, the fact that so many notable people in the streetwear scene were outed or closely affiliated with people on the list or kept very quiet about their affiliates being on the list, or just the list in general, also speaks to the culture of toxic masculinity present in streetwear. I mean, even of the many streetwear documentaries I had poured through to research for this video, I very rarely saw more than 2 to 3 women speaking at a time, and at that, very rarely were they women of color. And I don't even want to speak to the queer erasure that was present in those documentaries as well. It's very important that brands today sincerely and seriously consider women and queer folks, even if it's not just from an ethical or an inclusivity standpoint. You're just also cutting yourself off from a demographic that also resonates with and enjoys streetwear, and that's just
Exactly. Not just only that, but you're cutting off yourself from a big chunk of money or I'd say revenue that will be coming in if you just include these people. So I don't think it would be a problem to include these people. I definitely would if I get to a point where my brand is popping and everything like that. Why would I disclose these people, bro? Why? I want those tens, fifties, and hundreds from literally anybody. I don't care. Why? If you think it's dope, you wanna buy it, I'll buy it. If there's a demand, for more feminized t-shirts, more feminized whatever it is, I'll make it a point to make it available to these people. So yeah, I get her from that standpoint.
it's not good business sense either. I don't think that any brand that isn't inclusive of women and queer folk can survive for very long in our new climate. And I think a good example of this is how Richard Mnisi, which I don't really think is a streetwear brand, but I have seen people saying that, so for the sake of this video, we will talk about that. But yeah, brands like Richard Mnisi and Art Club and Friends have inclusivity at the core of their business model, and I think that on top of offering a good product, that has helped them succeed and sort of survive the death of like local streetwear. Also, another show of how marketable or sellable this approach to community and inclusivity is looking at the success of Franasonic's Nkuli tie-dye t-shirts, which sold out really, really well and really fast in the pandemic. So with the Franasonic Nkuli tie-dye t-shirts, I think what has made them so successful is it does what I had mentioned earlier about what's made post-apartheid fashion work, where we combine our local influences with our global
This is a dope brand, by the way. I went on their Instagram channel and checked them out.
influences to create a new language or new meaning. So here we have Nkuli on one hand, very popular, very notably queer influencer in our local culture, and then we take Dennis Rodman, a very iconic person in our greater global conversation, and then creating a very new meaning or a very new image and a new idea by combining these two people together that means something very specific for us as people in South Africa. And that just kind of speaks to how it is very possible to still be a successful South African streetwear brand right now, but you need to move with the times. And that, I think that is my main point, the biggest tenet of fashion, which is that if it doesn't change, then it's not fashion. And I think the founders of these older brands just, perhaps maybe because they're aging out of the sort of...
Exactly. You don't have to change the philosophy behind your brand, but always make sure that the designs and aesthetics of your brand are always changing with the times, changing with the trends and everything like that. But the philosophy should always stay the same. The philosophy should never change. Do you get what I'm saying? So yeah, for example, with my brand, if it's urban culture canvas, the philosophy behind urban culture canvas should never change, but the designs and everything like that can change with the times and everything like that. But the philosophy should always be there. The philosophy should always be recognizable.
streetwear group, or maybe they're tired, or maybe they're just dealing with the difficulties that is just trying to have a business in this economy, weren't really wising up to the times in time, basically. So definitely, all that considered, might not be fair to say that streetwear has died, but definitely that the old guard is gone and that we're sort of in a second wave of our post-apartheid fashion and streetwear, and that for brands to be successful now, their legacy needs to be feminist, it needs to be queer, it needs to be concerned with the earth. So
no, I don't think that it needs to be. It can be, but I don't think it needs is sort of like, you don't have a sort of like room space to sort of maneuver and doing anything else, because it's sort of, she's sort of portraying it as if you don't do this, then you're not going to be successful. Now I think, just stick to your own philosophy, man. Just stick to your own philosophy and connect to people that are like that. Another thing that you can do, to sort of, make sure that your brand is out there, that your brand is being successful, is, center your brand around something else. All right. Center your brand around, as someone, I'll make an example with me and my brand. Right. With my brand, I want to center my brand around art. Right. Anything that has to do with art, I want to center my brand around that. Right. So you can start, um doing videos, or collaborations with people, who are artistic, people who are painters, people who are doing this and that. You can make collaborations with their artworks, print their artworks on your t-shirts, make those sort of collaborations, and that way, you're sort of starting to create this community of art and everything like that. And even more people are going to be interested in coming through and sort of seeing stuff like that. So I don't think that the face of your brand needs to be like feminist or queer or stuff like that. No, it doesn't. You just have to think on your head.
Of course, this is a very complex subject, and I've barely touched on a lot of different aspects, but I think just because I think it's a conversation for more than one day and one video. And as I had said before, we've lost so much of our fashion media, so we don't really have too much of an archive of our South African fashion industry anymore. And basically, I'm realizing now that my question for the culture isn't what happened or has streetwear died, but my question for the culture is, what's next?
Hey, we're gonna see, man. We're gonna see. Everybody has their own sort of way to explain what's next, but then we're gonna see. All right, man. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back soon with the 2 t-shirts that I just ordered. Peace.